So I'm going to talk about retirement planning. We are in Israel and many people invest in real estate, while some people find real estate very hard to maintain, and very simply, I'll say that there are tax benefits in purchasing real estate and renting it out. There's an exempt on the residential rent, and but commercial rent is quite expensive. Today, as I gather, Airbnb, for instance, deduct tax and source. So there's a problem, running a business through these kind of platforms if someone wants to evade the taxes. So that is a way that this platform enforced a business rent. Okay, so if someone finds it very hard and wants, to have some tangible assets which don't include, just a moment. Someone has finds running real estate very very tiring, and although there is quite a lot of exempts regarding residential real estate rent. So what I propose, and I have learned accountancy, and I actually I got a very high grade, and I found evaluating companies and financial instruments to be very interesting. And I actually got all the points at the bar exam in financial instruments, although many of the financial instruments like bonds are not very relevant because their yield is not as high. But we are now going into inflation times. Although in most of the world it's going down, in Israel it still exists more or less, and you can get in 2024 you can get quite reasonable rates. The stock market, which I mean the stock market, I mean the global stock market, the S&P, the worldwide economy has an average yield of about 6 or 7%, depends on the, if you're taxed on the rate taxes. But that's the average. You will have a roller coaster. So if a person has what I shall call fat of money, and it doesn't need the liquidity and to withdraw the money straight away, it's usually best to put in at least in a very strong market, because the yield at any time, we checked it, if you bought in New York, if you bought in Tel Aviv, in the last 100 years, real estate, and compare it to the S&P 500, the S&P 500 has done better. So what the S&P 500? It's S&P and other rating agencies. It's like doing evaluation of a company by the most professional people. They have the criteria, and it's actually a bit like a prophecy that creates itself, because if you pass the bar to get into the S&P 500, which is the strongest companies in the world, or the leaders in the world, therefore you will become a bit of a monopoly. Okay, you have a big influence as a company. So that's a very, and even Buffett said that, the S&P 500 they outbeat him and his investments. At this time, I'm not so sure, but I mean, the Russell was beaten, but Russell is the small cap. It's the smallest companies, and it was beaten very, very hard. And it is, in my opinion, not a bad time because it's a recovery, and for it might be, and it's quite beaten up because small companies have a problem to raise money. And therefore they are hit by a high interest. Inflation and interest are intertwined. I mean, they usually, the Federal Reserve or the main bank, central bank of a state, will fight the inflation by putting a higher interest rate. So, for instance, in Ukraine or in Turkey, or it might be in Argentina, I'm not so sure, you have a 10% to a 15% rate deposit because the currency is beaten down, and you won't win a lot because if if you offset the inflation, your income is not so high. But today in Israel, you have a higher rate where they give you for deposit, so it keeps safe for the money. Some people believe in metals, or gold as a haven for the value of money. It's very hard to buy it in stock market in Israel. I do believe that it's a limited resource, gold, and if it has its uses, it should be. But I'm not a geologist, and I don't know. You have replacements for other. You can take lithium, or which is for batteries and electric batteries, but you all the time have to be updated. If they have, if they found different resources, are they going out to the moon? It's a thing of a demand and supply. But the most, the basic thing for a person, if he wants to cut his fees, and that's the thing that you can actually have some control on, and that's the Buffett advice. You want to cut the fees. You don't want the banks to hit you and trade all day. You can just say, I'm going to put in the S&P 500. It's that's my control thing. If I have a good deposit, you can go, but also it's like a day trader. If you're, it's called a Keren Kaspit. You have a fund which has, indexed, but that you need a stock, you need to run it. So I suggest for a person to put in S&P 500, to put in a bank deposit. They offer now an average of 4% more or less. Don't take the dollar. The bank will kill you. Trade in the dollar. It will take this currency to the exchange will take a percent when it makes the trade. The banks in Israel, it's crazy. It's unbelievable. They make up 1%, and then if you for the purchase also 1%, and then you're just killed. I mean, that's what each small high-tech companies for. If they want to trade the salaries and stuff like that, it just eats the currency. They're slaves of banks. So that's it. That's the common average. If a person has interest, he has knows something about it. I mean, I even saw day traders where, in high tech, that I couldn't believe it because they say that, day trading is not, not profitable. A person is I mean, if I put in a share, usually I'll have 2 months of researching the company, just 2 months. For instance, luckily I put in Nvidia at the time. It was I put it before the Bitcoin crash because it has a very high, a great process capability. And then luckily I withdrawn all my money in around October 18. It wasn't complete luck because I realized something, with the interest of the bank, but I did sit for 2 months. I was in my studies and I sat for 2 months and I analyzed. And then if I had a profound logical explanation why this company and this branch and this field and this, I had but it's 2 months work. I mean, do you want to work with, 2 months and they find treasures? If that's your interest, you can do it. I mean, you have to, have it organized, not in a, intuitive, have it organized, make, lists and a program and record, make a paper trail of everything and have some more logic. Most people don't have the time. They have kids, they have work, they have they want a life, they want to see the sun, not to sit there in front of screens all day and get unhealthy, on caffeine or whatever. So it's a trade-off. But S&P 500 deposit in the bank today, that is your, in Israel today. And then you don't need to deal with the nitty and gritty of running an asset. So you are welcome to subscribe and press like and continue following.